Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me once again today, and welcome to a very special video. If you hadn't noticed, if you're not a Patreon supporter or anything, on the Patreon page I've opened up a new level, which I guess I'll just go ahead and show you. So, on Patreon, we now have a new supporter level on top of the $1 per month and $5 per month tiers, which is the tier where, basically, you request a specific video. So, for $30 basically, I'll make the video that you want. This is, of course, the Patreon up here. I'll have it linked in the description below as well. So, if you're looking for something real specific, or something that's slightly out of my wheelhouse, or something that you don't think I'll do soon, or if you just want something before I would normally get to it, you can definitely request a specific video, and I'll step out of my way and do that for you. It's a half-hour video, one monthly. There's a few limited slots where I'll do that, just to make sure that we still have time for all the regular stuff that I do as well. 5 a month is the most that I'm really looking for, and so this was a request by Jakalor, who is one of the developers of the Dominions 5 balance mod, the collaborative balance mod, which is currently on version 0.62. And he said, hey, I want you to look through the balance mod and kind of review it, and talk about the various changes made and what cool things it does for the game. So I spent a little bit of time going through the balance mod, and to be honest, there's a lot of changes. And I don't think I'm going to go through everything one by one, because that would take forever. As you can see here, this is just the change log going into 0.62 rather, and you can see there's a lot of price changes. Basically, they've gone through and they've sort of meticulously worked on changing almost everything in the game in order to improve the balance of Dominions 5, which I think is really, really neat. It's a fantastic idea. And I think they've done it pretty well, to be honest. So, just as an example here, see, they've got a whole bunch of bug fixes. They're adjusting the various stats of many, many different spells. There's not a lot of new stuff in this mod. Not a lot of new units, not a lot of new spells or items. But what they've done is they've just gone through and tweaked almost everything. In particular, they've done a lot of tweaking of the different nations. And so the nations are... basically, a lot of the nations that were generally agreed to be quite weak are now stronger in the collab balance mod, and some of the nations that were generally agreed to be extremely strong have actually been toned down. There have been a few nations that haven't seen much by way of changes, but not many. As you can see over here, we've got the scales. Scales have been altered, weapons and armor have been altered, almost every or a lot of items have been altered, given national discounts, added abilities, changed what they do exactly. So like the Robe of Invulnerability has been made a lot cheaper because nobody ever made it. Sea King's Goblet cheaper. Bane Venom Charm, Pop Kill halved and increased to construction level 6. I love that change. Thank you, God. Basically, they're discounting a lot of the stuff that never gets made because there are a few items that are just objectively the best in their role. And you can see all the trinkets are 20% cheaper. Amulet's cheaper, Amulet of the Fish, only Water 1 now, so that by itself is, for example, a huge buff to Early Age Relay, because now it can reliably and cheaply get its giant mages out of the water, the Aboleths. The Enormous Cauldron of Broth is cheaper, the Coral Blade bonus was nerfed because it was too powerful in a lot of contexts, all kinds of stuff. So like I said, I'm not going to go through all of the changes. If you want to look at all of the changes, or of course to play this mod, I'll have this document linked in the description, and I'll also have the mod download itself linked in the description, so you can go and check out the good work that Jakalor and Red Rob and all those guys have been doing, and see if it changes the game in a way that you like. What we're going to do in this video, however, is we are going to go through just a few nations and talk about the changes to them. Specifically, we're going to go through the bad nations first, and then the really good nations. Excuse me. Hiccups. So we're going to go through the bad nations and then the good nations. We'll just start in the early era. In the early era, there's a couple of nations that are pretty weak. Abyssia is pretty weak, but they're not super weak. They're not really, really bad off. The really bad nations in the early age are Makone, and then to a certain extent, Yomi. There's some division on whether Yomi is actually bad now, or whether the change to Dominions 5 buffed it enough that it's usable. I still fall in the Yomi is bad camp, because I think Yomi is very fragile, very easily counterable, but I know some people have used it to good effect. Let's talk about Makone first. So Makone, we've talked about Makone, and if we recall, their problems are basically their mages are bad, their troops are super expensive, they don't make any money because of the fort unrest that they constantly generate, and so they end up stuck in this position in the mid-game where they don't have any money, they don't have any troops that are durable enough to be worth their cost, they don't have good magic support because their magic is so limited, and they just can't really do anything. Like, they reach this point where Makone just can't take actions, really, unless they've happened to be doing really, really well. So, first of all, the Gigante base recruitment limit has been doubled to 2 per fort, and they have halved upkeep, so not only are they recruitable more, they're also a lot cheaper over time. That helps directly strikes at the heart of the money situation. Their rec point cost, the recruitment point cost, has been increased to 30. That's mostly a non-change. It will only mean that if you build like a fort in a random low population mountain, you won't be able to get maximum recruitment out of it, which is fine. This is a very interesting change. Perioeki Peltasts replaced by slingers with wicker shields. So the Perioeki were a unit that they were basically Heelot Peltasts, but with higher morale. So if you look at the Heelot Peltast here, you can see it's a very unexceptional, like, light infantry javelin unit. Low protection, obviously low morale because it is a slave. When it becomes experienced, it becomes a Neodemode Peltast. But that honestly was kind of a nerf, because that meant that it cost more gold, and the only good thing about these guys was they were so super cheap. Makone would deploy these guys en masse, because they're so super cheap that Makone could just crap them out by the ton, and use them to expand effectively by throwing javelins, and that was basically the only thing they had going for them. They had javelins. They've been replaced with the Perioeki Slinger, and this is actually an interesting buff to the nation, because Perioeki Slingers, very, very cheap. They're very similar to standard slingers, so if we look up just slingers here, basic slingers cost 1 fewer resource but don't have a shield, whereas Perioeki slingers have a wicker shield. That makes them more durable against ranged fire than you might think, because when arrows hit them, while they have Prot 5, there's a decent chance, because of that 4-point of shield parry, that any arrow that hits them will actually have to go through Prot 18, which is enough to deflect arrows almost all the time. They have the sling. A sling is not a very good weapon, but it has a lot of ammunition and decent range, and it also actually has decent damage. It does, well, it's only 5 because the strength is not added to your damage. But the important thing is that the quality of this weapon doesn't matter because it's on a nation with access to air and fire pretty reliably through Archons. That means that you can recruit masses and masses of Perioeki slingers and cast Wind Guide and Flaming Arrows on them. That makes them Precision 14, which actually makes them pretty accurate with the slings. And it makes them do that extra 8 armor piercing damage hit when the slings connect. So this gives Makone a slightly durable, ranged option that actually has long range, which before they had no long range unit option, which can also deal surprising amounts of damage in the mid-game, because you can mass them up by the hundreds and then basically be spamming crossbows at your enemy. They're actually more effective than crossbows because they fire every round. So that is a very interesting tactical option that Makone previously did not have. And it doesn't actually, you still have the Heelot Peltasts, so you can still expand with Heelot Peltasts, and Perioeki Slingers kind of become your mass ranged unit in the mid-game. A very interesting change, definitely a buff. Gigantomachia was brought down in terms of cost, requirements, and research level, so that it might actually be cast. Neodemodes were given the standard 1 effect, so they actually increase the morale of their unit. You can see that here, standard 1, that's not in the base game. So they cost a lot more, but having a few mixed into your squad means that the squad has higher morale, which is actually worthwhile. It's worthwhile, with that change, to focus on recruiting, on keeping a few of your Helots alive to become Neodemodes, so that they will have that effect. And I think that's fantastic, because it's worthwhile, actually having these guys, whereas before you just deliberately got them killed because they cost you more money without giving you any more utility. And I think that's great. 3-point capital fort. Fort unrest cut by 1/3. Those two are dramatically important changes for Makone, because the problem with Makone has always been A, they don't have income, and B, they can't really recruit things. The 3-point capital fort, which is unique in the early age, means that they can actually churn out their capital-only mages 50% faster. So you can recruit 3 Archons in 2 turns, or you can recruit 3, I've lost my words, the Thug chassis, 3 of the, not E4s, the other one. Oh god. This is what happens when I try to say words and think of things, I just forget what they are. Polar March, 3 Polar Marches in 2 turns. So you can actually become a Thug Nation, or you can actually have 50% more magic, basically, in a relevant way. So that's a fantastic buff for Makone. It also means that Makone will draw more resources because it's a better fort, and so you'll be able to recruit your hoplites, your Gigantes, a lot better. Fort Unrest being cut by a third is a straight income buff, and that's amazing. That's what Makone needs to remain relevant in the mid-game. Losing an earth income, gaining a water for Blessing of the Godslayer. Blessing of the Godslayer is that national spell that you can only cast with water gems, of which you don't start with any, and only the Basilius and the Elder Cyclops can actually site search for. So getting that is also situational, but useful. Slight Archon, cost cut. Gerontes have gone to Fire 1 with a research bonus of 2. That makes them actually fairly efficient researchers, which is very, very important. Gerontes now have a place in the lineup, and they are actually useful for researching. E4's tiny, tiny cost cut, and they're still working on this, on making mages not start old if you take Unaging. Overall, I think this makes Makone probably a functional nation. The most important ones are this right here. Like, that's by far the most important. That alone would make a huge difference. And this right here, giving them efficient research. They also, if I recall correctly, it looks like they did not get access to, well, they already have access to it. What am I saying? They already have access to Sow Dragon's Teeth, which is a great little summoning spell, and that could definitely be useful with, since your E4s now actually cost slightly less, your Archons cost less. Archons are going to be most of your magic, since now you can recruit them from your 3-point fort. That will be a dramatic change. And this is an interesting change, fairly minor, but very interesting. This is a pretty good one as well. So that's Makone, and in this mod, I think Makone probably much more usable than they used to be. I'm actually interested to try it out. The other really weak early age nation is Yomi. Yomi also got some pretty dramatic changes. First of all, income penalty cut in half. So they now actually make money when before they didn't. However, they now automatically spread Turmoil 3 no matter what you took in your Pretender God creation. So basically you always take Turmoil 3, which you always did anyway. But yeah, I don't know how much that is actually going to change things. Because like Yomi always took Turmoil 3 because they always wanted the Chaos Power buff. End of Culture brought down in cost, requirements, and thaumaturgy level, so now you can cast it earlier and for cheaper. That's very important because End of Culture dramatically increases your free spawn. Small defense buff to Bakemonos. Labs cost 250 gold in mountains. That's valuable. That makes you want to take mountains in particular. Yomi also got extra gem income because they're hugely gem reliant. The upgraded versions of the Nominari don't get extra upkeep, which they used to. Sorcerers have become much more efficient researchers. They now have access to the Oni summoning spells, and one of their national pretenders, the Oni Kunshu, the Titan chassis, has been decreased in price. Most Titans have been decreased in price. And the Master Sorcerer gained an Oni Summoner ability so he can free spawn Onis as well. Once again, very solid changes. Like I said, I don't know that Yomi... I've had some people tell me that they think Yomi is already pretty decent in Dominions 5. I don't necessarily agree, but I think we can all agree that these changes would make Yomi pretty substantially much more usable. Labs costing 250 gold in mountains is a big one. This is the major change. That is very important. And having 1 extra fire and 1 extra death gem, also very valid. Also very, very useful. End of Culture being quicker to get to, also important. This makes it very likely that Yomi will actually be able to get to End of Culture by the mid-game and deploy it. Otherwise, they don't really go down thaumaturgy much. But if you can deploy End of Culture in, around like turn 30 or so, then that becomes very impactful. And having the cheaper labs means you can set up mage recruitment centers outside of your capital a little faster and start pumping out mages to get your research up so you can actually get that research with your sorcerers. Sorcerers in base are not fantastic researchers. I need to pull up Yomi here. In the mod, they're a lot better at research, and so that actually gives Yomi some, some sting. Because the sorcerers here, 125 gold for 13 research, that's pretty solid. Like, I'll buy that for $1. And it makes their research fast as well as efficient. Very, very nice. Beyond that, there are some other nations that are weaker in the early age. Relay was one of them. But honestly, all of these are good changes. Slave mages getting a radical price cut in exchange for being slightly weaker, but not in a way that really matters. Mind lords and androdai slightly cheaper. Slave trolls slightly better. These are all relatively minor changes. The starting army has been buffed, and they got void sanity, which isn't really terribly relevant. But the important thing is that amulets of the fish are now forgeable just with water magic. That by itself makes Relay immensely better, because it means they can actually get out of the water reliably, as I said. So, all of this stuff, nice. This makes their communioning a lot more powerful because their communion slaves are cheaper. But overall, the biggest change is the amulets of the fish. In the early age, there are a couple of really strong nations as well. Fomoria, in particular. Fomoria, as you can see, got almost no changes. The Fomorian God King got cheaper, that's all. Because they didn't need anything. They're already strong. Pangaea actually got nerfed, because Pangaea, it's widely agreed, is overpowered. So Pan leadership has been cut. Minotaurs got buffed, because Minotaurs were never used, but Satyrs, Satyr warriors, and Revelers all got a price increase. And then all Centaurs got a price increase, plus White Centaurs, the Sacreds, who are disgustingly powerful, got a rec point increase, so you can recruit them slightly less. And forts now cause unrest. This is the quality that Makone has in the base game. It's actually quite crippling. I'm almost thinking this might be too heavy a nerf for Pangaea. Not that Pangaea isn't overpowered, but Fort Unrest 15 destroys Makone pretty significantly, and I'm worried it might do the same to Pangaea. I'll have to test it out sometime. I haven't played Pangaea in this mod yet, but it would be interesting to see how bad that hurts them. Other very strong nations in the early era, Baratos. Well, Baratos is good, but has a weak early game, and so basically their early game got buffed. The Melkart Pretender got buffed. They got a better commander. Their brides got better undead leadership. And their starting army was increased slightly, 5 extra Baratian soldiers. So that might give them a little bit better expansion in the early game, have them in with a fighting chance instead of getting rushed. And who else was very, very strong? Vanheim is very strong in the early game. No changes. They're good how they are. Fomoria, Vanheim, Helheim, this is kind of the level of power that I think the mod is aiming at for most nations. And I think they're taking a good stab at it. In the Middle Age, the weakest nations, there's honestly competition because there are a number of very weak nations in the Middle Age. Machaka, definitely a competitor, one of the worst nations in the game. And one that I'm playing right now. In this mod, they get a lot of changes which are very, very good for them. First of all, black sorcerers are not old. The sorceresses are more expensive by 50, which kind of hurts, but they get an automatic extra random, so they now have 4 paths instead of 3, and they're going to have 2 in something, except I believe they also have a nature random potentially. Sorceress. Yes, they can random nature, which would be unfortunate, but death nature is not a terrible cross path, and the odds are they're going to have 2 in something, which makes them valuable. Now, they're less efficient at researching, but they're still efficient researchers, just not as efficient as they were. And they're not bad. Honestly, sorceresses got better. Black sorcerers got better. Basic warriors and archers got cut down in price because they were never used. Machaka hoplites got buffed and cut down in price, although resource costs still high. They were affected by a general plate armor change that made plate armor more affordable, so that could be very good. Black hunters cost minus 25. Hunter Spider Death Shape got extra magic resistance and higher strength. That makes Black Hunters really good. They were already pretty good, or usable at least, one of the better aspects of Machaka. That makes them really good. Not quite Anakite level good, but getting up there. Forest Labs cost 250. Fantastic little buff, because forests are where you can recruit your Witch Doctors, and Witch Doctors got an extra 10% random. So, we can look here. They also have a chance to random something effective, and You know, they're still bad researchers, but you can recruit them now if you want. And the Forest Labs, you can also recruit some of your other mages as well. Spider Archer rec point cost down. That's great. That's actually a buff that I suggested, although not to this mod team. We were completely independently. I did not cause this. Bane Spiders got extra patience, and then Spider Armor got changed. So defense penalty down, encumbrance down, resource cost down. Full helmet went to a half helmet, so they have a little bit less head prot, but cheaper resource cost and an extra point of defense. The net result of this is that Spider Warriors went down to 30 resources, a net change of 6, and their defense skill went up to 9 instead of 7, while their prot went down to 18, mainly from the head changes. Overall, I don't know that that's a hugely impactful change, but the lowered resource cost is very, very welcome for both them and for Bane Spiders, because it makes them just slightly more affordable. If you could recruit 5 Spider Warriors before, now you can recruit 6, and that's pretty solid. The half helmet, and I mean, the extra defense skill also certainly doesn't hurt, especially in assassinations where one missed or hit strike can be the difference between winning and losing. A Bane Spider having defense 12 is very welcome. Machaka Spear loses the attack penalty, which makes their infantry better. So overall, like the Machaka Hoplites just got slightly better in several ways. Their defense skill went up because their armor penalty went down. Their attack skill went up, and because their strength went up, so they do more damage, and their attack skill went up because they lost their attack penalty. Plus, their shield got an extra point of parry and an extra point of prot. So it's still not a good shield, but it's a better shield, and it has a high parry value, so it's very likely to get in the way. Now, Machaka Hoplites... It looks like Machaka Hoplites' protection actually went way down, because that says 12. That's a bug, that's a glitch in how this is displaying it, because the plate Halberg is prot 18. It's not reading this correctly. In actuality, their prot would be, it would still be 17, so it wouldn't have changed. Okay, that's fine. For a second there, I was worried. In any case, overall, great buffs, and the starting army was buffed to include Machaka Hoplites instead of warriors and have more archers. So fantastic. Another middle-aged, very weak nation is, of course, Xibalba, the frog people. Xibalba got some nice little buffs as well. Mooch costs all got cheaper, basically all of them, including the Sacred Assassins, so that's pretty solid. All Chakmooch got poison resistance. Obsidian Blades, the weapon their Sacred uses, gets +1 defense. Their ranged units got +2 precision. Womooches, their giant Sacreds, got cheaper in terms of rec points. So all of this is just designed to kind of make them, like, better at, just cheaper, generally more able to recruit things. And I think, although it isn't listed here, I believe that their units actually, their mages actually also got cheaper. I don't know why it isn't listed there, but I think that's true. If we look at late age Xibalba, no, that doesn't list it. Huh. Could have sworn that I saw that they'd made a bunch of the mages cheaper. I think it was in the change logs, maybe? Because that's the thing that really hurts middle-aged Xibalba, is the fact that their mages are super expensive. Also, yeah, you can see here there's a whole bunch of changes that aren't necessarily listed. Hide shields on dart throwers. That's good. Phlegra. Yes, there it is. Xibalba, middle age. Bakab, 50 gold less. Muchkuhul, 40 gold less. Aha, 35 gold less. It's 15 gold less. That's what they needed. They just needed their mages to be cheaper, and they'd be a little bit more solid. Because their mages are of surprisingly low utility for the number of paths they have. So that's a huge change. Everything else fairly minor, but generally aimed towards making everything a little bit cheaper, a little bit more efficient. And that's really all that was necessary for that nation to compete. Middle-age Asphodel is another really sad nation. So they got the same changes as Pangaea there. Bless bonus that they didn't have before. That's really good. National Province Enchantment for +2 growth, base cost 1 gem. So you'll be able to pay extra gems to make this last longer. That is also going to be a big change for Asphodel, because their main problem is that they have to take, they start at growth 3, and they have to take growth 3, and they're a pop kill nation, so their province dies anyway. So with this, you might be able to kind of keep the benefits of growth 3 while getting a few more pretender creation points. They can now summon Sagittarian Carcasses, undead centaurs. Dryad Hags can now reanimate and have double the chance for a random. They gain access to the Pangean special national spells, which are... Let me show you real quick. Middle Age Asphodel, national only. So these are the tune spells, which can be cast by nature mages. This is basically Panic. This is Tangle Vines, but with a very... These all have a very large area of effect, actually. So yeah, Panic with a huge AoE, Tangle Vines with a huge AoE, Fatigue with a huge AoE, Armor negating Fatigue. That's actually incredibly overpowered. I don't know what to think about this. These, if this is correct in showing AoE 25, I bet it's not. I bet that's not correct, because that would be grotesquely overpowered. Yeah, I hope that's not accurate. In any case, they now have access to those spells, which are pretty neat, on top of the national spells that they already had. Sagittarian Carcasses summons, as I said, the undead centaurs, which have sleep vines, plenty of hit points, as well as a vine bow, which fires Tangle Vines, I believe? Yeah, Tangle Vines. Those are pretty good. Carrion Fecundity. This increases... This is that spell they were talking about that increases the fertility of the land. Growth scale is increased by 2, and it lasts longer if more gems are used. It costs death gems, which they start off with the income for, so that's not bad. And Carrion Growth, magic resistance check removed, discount on vines, Panic Apostates got cheaper, less leadership, but cheaper. All centaurs that are not black centaurs cost more, and then black dryads and dryad hags gain Carcass Collector. I'm actually not entirely certain what Carcass Collector is. It doesn't show it either. What does Carcass Collector do? I don't know. Hey Jakalor, if you're watching this, tell me in the comments what Carcass Collector does. I presume that means that they free spawn undead of some kind? Presumably. Like, I would assume that's what it means. In the Middle Age, the best nations were undoubtedly Ashdod and Nazca. And as we can see here, the change to Ashdod was just nerfing the thing that made them grotesquely overpowered. They just nerfed Anakites. Magic resistance down, relatively small nerf. HP down, relatively small nerf. Rec point cost doubled. That's a big nerf, because it means that Ashdod cannot safely take... I'm going to turn the music down just slightly, since it's kind of in a loud point here. That means that Ashdod cannot safely take Turmoil 3, because they won't be able to pump out tons and tons of Anakites. Which I think is a good change, definitely. As for Nazca, Nazca got their Condor summoning spell nerfed hard. Now it's 18 gems for 10 Condors with basic scaling at Conjuration 5, instead of, I think it was like 12 gems for 7 with double scaling at Conjuration 3. Let's look at that spell real quick, just to confirm that I'm not blowing smoke rings when I say that. So we're going to go to Nazca. Nazca. Summon Condors. Well, okay, obviously this is the modded version. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I was right. It had... That still says double scaling there. But basically, they'd made it cost a lot more and come later in the tree. So it's not going to be the crutch of early game Nazca that lets them just shit out millions of invincible sacreds with tons of weird abilities. I still don't know why Condors have all of this. Like, their siege strength is ridiculous because of the siege bonus. They're the stealthiest things in the game for no real reason. And they have patrol bonus plus 20, and they start with 15 shock resistance because why not also make them immune to lightning? Their pretenders got taken down in price like almost everybody's pretenders did, and their starting army got increased very slightly because their starting army really does blow. Just 3 more guys of each type. So yeah, great changes once again, bringing down Nazca's early game power, bringing down Ashdod's rush power, buffing up some of the weakest nations in the game to be potentially competitive. Overall, very, very solid. In the late age, there's one nation that I'm really happy about, and that is Jomon. Because Jomon was awful. And people have tried to say to me, oh, I don't think Jomon's that bad. No, you don't understand. Jomon's bad. Jomon's bad by comparison to the competition. Jomon would be bad actually in any age. In the early age, Jomon would still be bad. It might be worse, because then you wouldn't be able to get the resources to even recruit your damn troops. But the first one, this is the biggest change that I think Jomon needs right away. Standard forts for the late age. So they start with a citadel, which gives them more resources, and gives them 3 commander points, so they can actually recruit things. That's huge. Plus they can now build citadels, so that's also huge. A little bit more hit points to their units, because weirdly enough, Jomoni's units all have like 1 less hit point than standard humans, which is weird. Slight buff to ninjas, which is nice. Labs cost less gold in mountains. That's an interesting and very thematic buff, because they can also recruit Shugenja and Master Shugenja in mountains without forts. So this enables you to set up labs in forts to recruit those guys without really having to worry about it. Coastal start guaranteed. That's a fantastic change, because Jomon really wants and needs a coastal start. And a turn 5+ unique random event, which gives you a Ryujin, a Crab General, and 3 to 5 Shark Warriors. That gets you underwater. So this means Luck 3 Jomon. That's what that means. That just straight up gets you underwater. You don't really have to worry about it. As soon as that procs, you can go, you can get your dragons. It'll be a good time. Foreign Rec Monks enables you to actually use those monks a little bit more. Less resource cost on Samurai Armor, and a cost decrease on Samurai Cavalry. That makes your troops a lot more spammable, which is what you need. If we look at Jomon here, you can see that the Samurai now cost 20 resources. The Glaive Samurai, the Naginata Samurai rather, now cost only 17, which is downright reasonable for the late age. Samurai Archers still cost 23, but that's still a slight decrease from what they were. And the Oban, the Gohatamoto, the Akaoni Samurai, it's made all these guys a lot better. It's also made Samurai Cavalry quite a bit better. Samurai Cavalry are in a weird and bad spot because they don't have the hoof attack that almost all cavalry also have, and their Light Lance is actually dropped, which most Light Lances in the game are not, but their Light Lance breaks and can only be used once. So they're down to only the Katana attack, which is a high-quality attack, but it means their attack density is half that of every other cavalry in the game, pretty much, except for, like, there's a Kurno Cavalry and Eponi Nobles, the early age unit for the Marverni. They don't have a hoof attack, and I think Kurno, the Is Cavalry, don't have a hoof attack. But beyond that, Samurai Cavalry are sort of in that rarefied company. At 25 gold, though, probably worth it. Metal Glaive and Naginata attack -1 to 0. That's very useful because it increases the attack of several units. It increases the attack of the Sohei, who use Naginatas. It increases the attack of the Naginata Samurai. And it also, of course, increases the attack of Shark Warriors, who were already good, and with that buff will be slightly better. And their starting army got buffed from 15 Ashigaru and 10 Samurai armies to 15 Oban and 15 Samurai Archers. Oban are solid units. You just normally don't recruit them much, but they have decent prot, high attack skill, good defense skill, very, very solid. You can see their attack skill is actually 15 with that katana, because Ilwinter are weebs. And then 15 Samurai Archers just gives you more killing power. So with that, that means you can actually expand. This and this and this means that once you expand, you can actually recruit troops. And this means that you actually get to go underwater to get your cool stuff. All this done without actually changing the mages, which I think is fascinating and a great idea. This is a very conservative balancing mod that doesn't make, like, huge, disgusting changes, which I think is valuable. Like, it's worth doing that. All the changes being made are individually minor. They just add up. Also, while I'm up here, I was looking to see if there were any mage changes, but there aren't. Scales changed. They've nerfed growth, like, a lot in terms of income. They've buffed luck, and they've buffed order, so there's now actual competition in terms of what scales you want. Like, you might, if you want money, you should go order instead of going growth all the time. Growth gives you money in the base game in the short term and in the long term, because it straight up increases your income, and it also increases your growth, which increases your income over time, since your income is population dependent. Well, now order increases your income in the short term, and growth only increases your income in the long term. Given the way Dominions works with the kind of snowball effect where you take more and more provinces, might be worth going for order instead with these scales flipped like this. And of course, making luck better just is nice, because I like luck, and I think more people should take it. In the late age, there aren't any other like super standout weak nations, but there are a couple that struggle at different times. Bogarus struggles very much in the early game. Bogarus benefits from some changes earlier on, I think, but the main one is Zmei lose cold-blooded, which means Bogarus is a cold nation. Zmeis are a dragon summon, which is cold-blooded and so sucks in the cold. Being able to use them, pretty neat. And slightly better starting army. This still leaves Bogarus weak in the early game, but maybe slightly better at expanding, and a little bit more likely to get to the late game where they're powerful. Late age, what other nations are really weak in the late age? Lemuria is drastically overpowered in the late age, and you can see they took a pretty heavy hand to combat that with a minus 50% income penalty, a pretty significant penalty to nature and blood blesses, which makes blood vengeance and regeneration harder to get. They did buff spectral long spears, but they also moved Revive Consul and Revive Grand Lemur up to Conjuration 3, so that Lemuria can't start pumping out immortal super thugs right from the start of the game. These all slow down the Lemuria Death Ball, make it more likely for someone to come in and actually do some damage. Oh, of course, Pythium. Late Age Pythium is possibly the saddest nation. It might be worse than Jomon. Better capital income. All units have Swamp Survival and 5 Poison Resist. Random on the Acolyte. Gift of the Sacred Swamp gets much better, which gives you more Poison Resist. These are all designed to let you use Hydras, which currently you can't really use. Battle Deacons get Combat Caster. All infantry, significant price drop. All the important Roman infantry, at least. That's really handy, because Pythium's infantry is super expensive and not fantastic. Daughter of Typhon brought down so it's actually usable. Before at Conjuration 9, you just never cast it. There was no reason. And the Reveler, who is the foreign recruitment mage that breaks Pythium into blood, has been given separate randoms. So he now has a 36% chance to have a path instead of a 20% chance to have a path, and 20% to have blood instead of 10% to have blood. That's an amazing buff for the Reveler. For only 10 gold, absolutely take it. This does still mean you're still spending 300 gold to get 1 blood 1 on average, but that's a lot better than it used to be when you were spending 500 gold on average to get 1 blood 1. And it was also probably going to take you 10 turns instead of the 5 turns that it'll take this way. Better starting army, and your Hydras can now go underwater, which is sort of hilarious. Pythium is now a sea power. As silly as that sounds. So, fantastic changes there. I encourage you all to download this mod, to take a look at it, to look at things in the Google Doc, in the mod inspector. I'm not going to go through the whole damn thing because it is huge. There's been a ton of work put into this mod, and it looks like it might be really good, to be honest. I don't play with a lot of mods just kind of because I feel like the base game is complicated enough, but frankly, the collaborative balance mod, because it is so conservative with what it does, is not making the game more complex. It's just changing what's already in the game. A lot of times I feel for the better. Now, there may be some things that have to be tweaked. For example, and I actually mentioned this to Jakalor, just looking at early age Hinnom, this all seems ridiculous to me on the face. But I'll test it out, and I'll see if it's actually overpowered. Making Kohens cheaper and making Melkarts especially recruitable anywhere turns Hinnom into arguably a preeminent super combatant nation, and it also makes their blood a lot more efficient, which, I don't know. I really don't know. Avite base precision going up makes those Avite heavy archers a lot better, especially because the resource cost has been reduced. And I'm just not sure. Not sure about I haven't looked at the Warriors of the Dawn really in detail. Let's take a look at those actually while we're here. Hinnom, where'd you go? Where'd you go, Hinnom? There's Hinnom. Warrior of the Dawn. Okay, so wearing Dawn armor, and they are sacred. Interesting. So they're a hugely more resource-intensive version of Rephite warriors with slightly higher defense and 4 more points of protection. And the only difference is they have Dawn armor instead of scale mail hauberks. Oh, and they have the Dawn shield instead of a standard shield, so more parry. That's where the defense comes from. Okay, interesting. So magic shield, magic armor, immune to destruction effects, which Rephite warriors are not. I'm actually, to be honest, I'm not sure I would ever use these guys because they require such a monstrous quantity of resources. Like, in the early age, you'd be lucky if you could manage to get 2 of these guys out per turn. And nobody uses Rephite warriors anyway because of the pop kill and the unrest. So, I don't know. I don't think that actually makes any difference. I don't think they'd ever be used. But, Kohens being cheaper is, like, kind of a big deal because Kohens, that makes your blood hunting a lot more efficient. It makes Hinnom an actual, like, feasible blood nation. They do have pop kill, they do increase unrest, and, like, that's gonna happen. I mean, before, typically what happened was you were going to blood hunt with Melkarts just because one Melkart is effectively... like, one Melkart is 6 levels of blood searching. So, they're still more efficient than anything else. But if Kohens are 180, you might see Hinnom actually doing the thing where they blood hunt with their blood once. I don't know. In any case, this video is starting to run a little bit long. As I said, I encourage you to check the mod out. It looks really neat. I'm strongly tempted to run a game upcoming using this mod just to see what's what, or a couple of games. I'm gonna have to finish out at least one of the... Gotta finish out the game that's running right now on my channel, because I'm in kind of too many at the moment. But look for that in the future, because this is interesting. In any case, links to this document and to the mod download page will be in the description down below. Thank you so much, Jakalor, for your support of the channel. Really appreciate it, and I hope that more people check this out and give you some feedback on it, because I think it's going in a really good direction. Jakalor and a number of veterans have been working on it for a while, and it's looking pretty good. So, thank you all so much once again for watching. If you want a video of your very own, check out the Patreon. If you just want to support the channel, by all means, also check out the Patreon. And whether you do or not, of course, I will see you in the next video.